Welcome, Erica from Locked On Kraken, to Those Canadian Lads podcast. It's Hockey Chirps edition. We're going to be going through various teams, and we're going to start off with the new expansion, Seattle Kraken. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on here. We're counting down the days here as far as everyone who's following the Kraken. So it's exciting to be able to engage with other fans of hockey, and we're almost there.
Well, you're engaging with a fan base that's a bit nutty. We're hardcore Edmonton Oilers fans, just a heads up. So we're very passionate about our team, and you've just stolen one of our players, Adam Larsson. So thank you as you follow the team, and you'll be broadcasting and podcasting about the team. Thank you, and good luck with the Terminator. That's my nickname, the Swedish Terminator, Adam Larsson. So.
Oh, fantastic! Always, it's nice to get to hear about these guys, because I'm definitely an eye test person. So only met a handful of them when I was out for the expansion draft. So I'll take any nuggets that you have to get to know them a little better.
Jeff, let's get Jeff, my co-host, in here. Jeff, why don't you provide a little bit of an explanation of who Adam Larsson is and what he brings to the table?
Well, I don't know. Video would do it more justice than me trying to explain it, but you got obviously a big Swedish dude, doesn't seem to care about carrying the puck up the ice, and he's just going to lay the body down, which is always fun to watch. I like that type of hockey. So, yeah, he's going to be a good defensive mainstay for the Kraken going forward.
That's something that Ron Francis really talked a lot about. Securing the middle is what he said. So, I don't know. I think the Seattle Kraken might have a type, fellas.
You guys have built from the back end out, obviously with goaltending, defense, and then scattering a few decent forwards. I'm not going to say you have top end talent on the front, but before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about you and your podcast.
Sure
Jeff, maybe you want to jump in and let's dive in here.
Yeah, obviously. So obviously, you've launched the Locked On Kraken podcast, and you just started that on July 1st, I believe, with a few episodes going. Going to be at the training camp, which is fantastic. But I noticed that you're a sports journalist.
Yeah.
And that's always for somebody who grows up loving sports, who wants to be an athlete, but sometimes just can't get to that level. You've moved into the dream job. So how did that come about?
It came about really randomly, but it was through hockey. So I was an athlete my whole life and did a lot of writing-intensive study in university, but never really thought to put the two together. Followed baseball's my true love of a sport that I follow most consistently, and I'm a Mets fan, not a Yankees fan.
Nice.
That's
That's better than Yankees. That's better than Yankees.
If I turn my camera, you see that I match the motif here with the orange and blue.
Yeah,
real orange and blue. Real orange and blue.
No, I've got my sheets and everything. But so I big into sports, knew how to follow a fandom. My sister, I have two sisters, they're twins. But my sister Jessie in particular, least athletic of us all, by a lot, right? A lot. But she got into the Olympics, the hockey tournaments for the men's and women's side, which
nice.
2014 was pretty solid. Those are two really good tournaments. And so then she's just following all of the players that she had just seen play in the Olympics. And on the women's side, there was just starting a women's league in the United States. There had been the CWHL at the time. Yeah. Long story short, we go to the first game. I see, I knew a little bit about hockey. I watched Mighty Ducks a few times. I probably quote it. I was like, I got this. I know hockey things. And so we roll in there, and I knew enough to know, in hockey, all right, you got to stop the puck. Put your body in front. I'm a big defense is my jam. Yeah. So I was focused on the defense. And I noticed that the away team had this player that was just ripping these shots, right? These slap shots. And I'm like, holy crap, this sport is insane. Someone's supposed to step in front of that? What the heck is going on here? And so from there, we went to every game. We started to get to know the players. And from there, opportunities, people found out about my writing background. They found out about my sports background. I played sports in college, not hockey. but I played sports in college, and they were like, just come on our podcast, like, do this and do that. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I can just do that? They're like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's just like, just go there, do the reporting thing. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. But so, yeah, it just kind of grew from there, taking my younger sister to hockey games.
That's wild. That's wild. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. Like, obviously, like, you've dove into women's hockey. You obviously had the Premier Hockey Federation Commissioner Ty on not your last podcast, the one previous. So there's been a lot of great growth when it comes to the women's game. And you'd mentioned the Olympics, that Canada-U.S. rivalry, which have shown some fantastic games between the two countries. But obviously, you fell in love with the game from that standpoint, so that's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a good friend that I knew growing up. He was a Devils fan, and he'd be like, Erica, I know you're like so bummed when baseball season's over. He's like, you should get into hockey. I was like, I can't. I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. The Mets have been out of it since April, and now I've got nothing to do. He's like, no, like, I think you'd really like hockey. He and I laugh all the time because now I'm just doing all. He's like, I told you. I was like, all right, Dan, you got that.
We're big sports guys. Like, so baseball, hockey, football. Like, we're into it hardcore. But truly, obviously, it's bred in our blood. Coming from northern Canada, that hockey is our favorite sport. But truly, in my opinion, one of the fastest, hardest hitting, action-packed game. And I have a lot of friends in the United States, and they all talk about, how they've kind of acclimatized to hockey as, one of their favorite sports, as they've kind of, seen the growth in the game, not only on the men's side, but on the women's side specifically as well. I'm a big proponent of women's hockey. I have a 6-year-old little girl who's starting her journey. This will be a 3rd year in her hockey program, and
nice.
We got to watch for the first time, where she really got and she really enjoyed, was the World Championships that were just held in Calgary just a few weeks back ago in Canada. Marie-Philippe Poulin.
Yeah.
That's my French accent. So
yeah, that was a massive goal in overtime, of course.
Yeah, heartbreaker for the Americans. But serious question. So, as the game develops, as the female game develops, do you think there is room for a professional league in the United States with financial backers to grow that sport? Because I want a league for my daughter that she can look up to and see, I want to win that cup. I want to win that trophy.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I think right now women's hockey is going through growing pains. And we've honestly seen it in every professional sport. It's just that on the men's side of things, a lot of this drama happened 100 years ago. Like backdoor meetings and, changing the name to NHL to get the one guy out, and then you go and do your thing. So like we've seen this in sports before. So yes, I think we're also seeing the tide shift a lot with the way things happen in media in particular, and so sports media having to be so fast-paced. I think that really is an opportunity to kind of move aside anyone that's kind of trying to be a little bit more of a gatekeeper, like, if you're going to be an athlete, you have to sound like this and look like that, and most of the time that's a man. So, like getting rid of that. Things like podcasts and being able to stream and stuff like that is also showing that on the media side, it's opening things up. And so I think as that equals out in NCAA, obviously in the United States, we're starting to see also the revenue structure shift to be more equitable, even for college players. And the trend, I come from, I'm in sports now, but I come from like a, business, poli-sci kind of background. So we see that when those spaces start to open up, when you open up the market, right, then that's when the diversification comes in, and we'll see what the next trend is. And I think truly that women's sports across the board are going to find ways to get more sponsorship dollars in the ways that we traditionally see for sports, but also in some new and innovative ways.
That'd be really cool because I know watching the last year they had their league kind of go into the bubble and they were streaming it through Twitch, which does have a lot of viewers, but from a Canadian point of view, watching it, they really had to, in my opinion, maybe up their game from a broadcast level, and obviously that takes money and investment and things like that. But that was for me just a disappointment trying to tune in, and I remember one team had like a jersey over the where the coach stands, hanging, and I think it was representative of something. I'm like, you're blocking the ice! You're blocking the ice! Fix that! Somebody tear that jersey down. So, but anyways, I digress.
Like,
but
I know it's your fallen comrade, but get it out of here!
Get it out of here! This is already my favorite podcast. So, Jeff, here we go. Erica's coming on again. So,
yes.
But Erica brought up a really excellent point. Like we remember the days of there was 6 channels available to watch, and that's one of the reasons I think hockey was so big in Canada, or is so big in Canada, is because realistically on Saturday night there was nothing else to watch unless you went to the theater or anything like that. So now that's expanded so much, and now it's not even cable; it's all online, it's all streaming. It's not just the voices of those that are on TV or in print journalism. It's however you want to get your message out, and people find that, and that's allowing that avenue to take place.
Yeah, for sure. And I think hockey, baseball also, I guess I just like these really super traditional sports, but
Yeah.
I think that's where those two sports, but we'll stick to hockey, that's where they have the most room for growth, is to figure out what that balance is, because to your point, you do want a very professional look. I remember Gary Bettman, boo, no, just kidding.
No, boo.
I feel like when you say it didn't feel natural to leave that space there, so I had to go for it.
thanks for filling it.
So when the commissioner, he was talking about what the real turning point was while he was commissioner, since he's been commissioner of the league. And one of the greatest things that I think the guy's ever said, to be honest, is that hockey changed when HDTV became a thing. Hockey is a sport that you have to be laser focused, and you want to be laser focused, obviously, on the puck. And that's really hard with low quality. But as technology improves, so too can the experience for all sports. But hockey is one of those that for everyone from your diehard keeps the books and the stats type of fan to someone who's just coming in to have a few beers. It improves when the quality of the picture improves, and so I'm really curious to see what type of activations, now we've got this augmented reality, Carolina's got a massive panther coming at you while you're watching a football game.
That was rad, by the way. Yeah.
That was wild. It was wild.
Quite wild. I don't know what that's going to look like, but those are some of the ways that I think just the sport in general really has an opportunity, but are they going to take it? Because again, a little bit more of a traditional sport, traditional market. I think they're starting to buck that a little bit, but I think there's a lot of people that would love to be a part of that conversation.
Well, that's one thing about hockey is they rarely take risks. They rarely take risks in regards to how they promote their players. People speaking out about Connor McDavid today just made comments about the refereeing in the playoffs. He didn't have the penalty drawn against him in the 4 games they played against the Winnipeg Jets. He finally made some comments about the rule book is there to be to be reffed and called on, and that might bite him in the ass later in the year. But having our star players speak out, especially star players in Edmonton, talk about things that matter, like proper reffing, things like that, and elevating their star players. That's one thing that doesn't happen in the NHL, is the star players are kind of muted. Their play is muted in the playoffs. They're allowed to shine in the regular season, and in the playoffs the game changes and everything is muted, and it hurts the game. It really does, because if you're going to grow a fan base in the United States, you need to see the best players, the Austin Matthews, the Connor McDavids. I'm not going to say there's any talent on Seattle yet, because we haven't seen them play.
Come on.
They have ebbs.
Come on.
Yeah, but
But I think also, to your point though, is where the other leagues have had an evolution where the athletes have become personalities as well. Like, you don't necessarily follow a team in the NBA, but you might follow a player like LeBron.
Right.
And the same goes with the NFL, where these players are now outspoken. They do get to express their point of views and get to speak to what they think is important. Whereas the NHL, maybe because of the structure of the league or that tradition that you were referencing, Erica, these players haven't really given their points of view on a lot of things. And when you get like an Austin Matthews who does speak out, and you get a Jonathan Toews who does say something about what social injustice is going on, we now see the personalities of these players, and then you can get behind these guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's just where the market is headed because of social media. The advent of social media is so individual, and basically any one of us could go viral. Hopefully not for something too crazy, but I mean, and if one of us can do that, then imagine what someone that already has baked in that follower group can do. And so you're starting to even see sponsorships go more one-to-one to companies directly to the athlete or to the influencer. So as an organization and that just seems to really want to take as much control over revenue as possible, I think that they're going to have to, the NHL is going to have to really figure that out. But some of that means putting that content in the hands of your players and having it come from the player directly to the fan.
Yeah, enough canned speeches from the dressing room. Yeah, we got pucks deep, Play hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into this. We've talked, a little bit. We got to know Erica a little bit. Let's talk about the Seattle Kraken. Obviously, big day for them today in Seattle. The fans were able to go get their jerseys. To put their names on the back and name on the front and go have some fun. What do you see moving forward? Well, let's start with Ron Francis. Obviously, he's built the team. What do you think? How good of a job has Ron done? Ronnie Francis.
Ronnie Francis, I was going there. Ronnie Francis. The first thing is that I didn't realize, and I had to look this up just to do my due diligence as a journalist. But I was like, this guy's Italian. He's yes. I walk up, no lie. I walk up, and I'd only ever interviewed him on Zoom or something, and so we're at the expansion draft, and I was one of the first people. I got a jockey in position. Now everyone on the beat's been amazing actually, but so I'm middle of the pack, and he's walking up. I'm walking up. We both do one of these. I was like, oh, this guy. So I had to put that out there. I was like, am I home? Am I in New York again? This is pretty familiar. It was one of those. I was like, this guy's he's awesome. Hey, I was like, I don't know if you've ever been to New York, but you're from here. That's all I know. All I know. You can just tell. I was okay, good vibes.
You know what? It resonates now after watching the Netflix documentary about the Danbury Thrashers in Connecticut. It's like, yes. Because the gold chain that Ron Francis was wearing during the expansion draft,
and he's
really
always got his little
his wide.
It stood out to me. I'm like, hey,
exactly. Hey, he's always got his shirt a little bit unbuttoned, not in an uncomfortable way, but he wants that chain to be out.
He played with those '80s Hartford Whalers, man. Our coach Tippett from the Oilers, he had the stash. Ronnie Francis. That makes sense now.
Intense.
It adds up now. So
it tracks. This is the type of journalism that I bring to my coverage of Seattle.
This is what we love. We're going to be checking
this out all the time. The guy's Italian.
Yeah. We're having way too much fun today.
Oh, it's amazing. But
so Erica,
to go back to your the team. So, I didn't get to see Ronnie Francis play, but heard about the guy. He's kind of good at the hockey.
Big name.
But I think what stood out is also being able to track what he did in Carolina. And I have to give stick taps to Allison Lukin. Like myself, she's really into leadership development, and she kind of did track Ron Francis and this team, and there's a lot of leadership here. I agree with what you guys were saying earlier. I say it probably on every podcast. Not really sure how I feel about the forwards just yet.
Yeah.
But Ronnie said he's going to build from the back. I'm going to trust Ronnie. You know, he's got the chain out. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
All right. He made me a believer. So, but we'll see. I think that there is a solid leadership. That's what attracted me and gravitated me towards the Seattle Kraken. And this is, you know, I was good on the women's side, international hockey. I was like, NHL, you're kind of messy. I don't know if I want to deal with that. But but seeing how this franchise is built, seeing what Ron Francis has been able to do, I was intrigued to see, again, that innovation that I think is coming in hockey. And Seattle definitely has that in spades when it comes to their leadership. I think that they have enough of that on paper, on the ice. Now it's going to be a matter of, because I don't think they're not as talented as theoretically they could be on paper, coming out of the expansion draft, and even looking at some of the moves that they did or even haven't yet or maybe won't make. I think they could probably turn some of those defenders into a more dynamic forward. I'd like to see them do that. I was looking at cap friendly. I think they have about $8 million to work with, so they could, in theory, pick something up. But I mean, we're close to time here, so I don't really know how that's going to work out. That's how I'd like to see them use some of that money. But I think it's going to be a matter of, I get the sense that Ron, and especially hiring Dave Haxtell as a head coach, I know he got a lot of slack for what he did or didn't do in Philly. But I get the sense that they really want to build that character, that culture. They have a prototype in mind. I was saying, you know, like I was joking around, Seattle has a type, but they do. And I think that we've seen that start to develop. It's going to be, I think, though not as, I think that he's going to work, Ron Francis and his team are really going to work this core group. It's all fun in games now, but I get the sense that they're really going to get down to business. I get the sense that Ron has an idea, his team has an idea of what they want in that first year so that they're exactly where they want to be in that third year. And I get the sense that they will be aggressive when they have to be and cut things off, at the knees if it's not working, and really push to get the performance that they're expecting.
With Seattle, so obviously, coming in as an expansion team, Jeff and I, we follow the NHL for a number of years. We saw, my first expansion team that I remember was the San Jose Sharks coming into the league. Mom bought me a jersey. That lasted about a year because I was a big diehard Oiler fan. I don't know why she bought us a San Jose Shark jersey, but whatever, it happened. That being said, they're following the coattails of the Vegas Golden Knights. That's nice and all. They're a Cinderella story. What happened to them? That doesn't happen to expansion teams every year. So, hopefully the expectations of the fan base are, that they're realistic, right? But that being said, you do have, in my opinion, the best tandem in goal with Grubauer and Drieger in the National Hockey League. So right there is, the basis of the wall that's being built up in Seattle is with the strength in goaltending. And then obviously when you talk about leadership, can't believe I'm going to say this, but because he broke Connor McDavid's leg a couple of years ago, but Mark Giordano, I'm not his biggest fan. He ruined a fine dinner that I was having with my wife at the local establishment. And I looked up and I'm like, oh, why is Connor McDavid laying on the ice at the last game of the year? And that was bad news. So anyways, good luck with Mark. But having some leadership and then, having a good basis, with Jesse Oleniak, I think his sister's the Olympics. Oleksiak, yeah. Sister's the big swimmer in Canada. Yes. She's more famous than him anyway. Yep. But I digress. And then, also on defense, Adam Larson, who's a shutdown guy. So you guys have a good core base in Seattle from the back end in the goal. And like we talked about, the forwards, you don't have the superstar type talent, but you have good grinder type players. And I'll throw Jordan Eberle out there because he was obviously one of our faves, in Edmonton for a number of years. But I know Jeff's dying to jump in here.
Well, no, keep going.
Oh, yeah, I'll just keep talking.
Yeah. I think, once again, you look at the players that are on the team, a lot of them have held C's and A's on other teams. It's that building from the leadership out. And I think, what happened in Vegas was such a rarity. Like, no expansion team's done that before. Let's face it, established teams like Buffalo, like Edmonton, don't do jack. We just lose. So it takes a lot to go on there. But you look at, you'd mentioned cap friendly, you look at their salary cap structure, and realistically, no player is going to really submarine them at any point in time when it comes to it. So if they need to jettison somebody, it's not like their team's going to be like, I can't accept that contract, so we will be able to move on and possibly build from the team that way.
And you're in the weakest division in the National Hockey League. So
both of those things, yes. Both of those things we've definitely mentioned. And again, Allison is the one that really brought that to light. And we were talking on the podcast, Allison Lucan and I, about it's really that staggered approach. So as you said, it's you swap out this and then by next year or in 3 years that you need it again. And no one's, hitting that max at the same time, and then you run out of money. So yeah, and I think also the only thing I'd add to what we were just talking about is that I don't get the sense that Seattle is chasing Vegas. I think the storyline is that Seattle is probably going to, they're inevitably going to be compared to Vegas, but I think Seattle's chasing Seattle. I think they really are holding on to the fact that the Seattle team was the first American team to win a Stanley Cup, and that is a driving factor to be the franchise that sooner rather than later brings another Stanley Cup to Seattle.
The Metropolitan's beautiful.
That's it.
Good Metropolitan's reference on the podcast tonight.
I had to. I told you I'm a Mets fan.
I can't believe they didn't go with that name, by the way. I think it would have been crazy smart.
I get it. I would have been a happy camper for sure. But also, I feel like I'd have been like, hey, guy.
Hey.
What's going on? Relax. We've been here. We got here first.
Yeah, obviously they want to build their own identity too, and like the city's going to embrace them. They see it's a good sports city, and obviously I would have preferred the Sonics, but I would rather see a basketball team take that name back. So, but like they did it, but even look how they engaged the community. You said you were at the expansion draft. They had Sean Kemp and Gary Payton out there bringing the players on. It's like that's full embracing of what the history of the sports in that city truly is.
Absolutely. Again, one of the things that I've really enjoyed covering the Seattle team, I actually got to do some freelancing with them when they were NHL Seattle, but that was one of the things that really stood out to me. It's not just the players and paying respect and homage to a lot of that sports history, but it's also knowing the cultural history, knowing that the Pacific Northwest, just as a region, has a lot of really unique history, and they're weaving that in ways that are, I think, already paying dividends when it comes to what we were talking about earlier, knowing that there's a new type of hockey fan that's kind of curious and intrigued, and now's the time to strike and really get them to fall in love with the whole concept. And I think that's what Seattle has done. Now, what will it look like on the ice? That's what I'm dying to know. I am an eye test person, so I'm chomping at the bit to get out to Seattle to see the guys hit the ice. I know that the team has been doing, just some players only stuff, nothing official with Haxtell yet, but soon enough they'll have their official training camp, and their first official practice is going to be, as I alluded to, something new for Dave as well. He's definitely got something to prove. The whole, everything for Seattle has themes. It's like you can tell Jerry Bruckheimer is a part of this because everything's like movie plot this. The Kraken.
I can't wait for their opening night. Yeah, opening night's gonna be wild. Yeah,
they're gonna have to pass out tissues because we just saw like a 20-second drama. We're like freaking out.
Ben Affleck coming from the asteroid.
It's just like everyone in their seat crying. Yeah. Exactly. It's just like going to be so wild. Everything's so dramatic. But I think it kind of, again, they're playing it up. There's, as much as I do think Ron wants to be pretty serious about hockey, I think that there are enough people in the organization that are also just trying to lift this and make this just a fun experience for everyone.
Do you think Vancouver's going to be their rival?
They're already billing it as such, and again, that goes back to the history of the Metropolitans as well. So I think that's playing them in the preseason. Obviously, geographically, that makes a lot of sense, and we still, unfortunately, are dealing with COVID. But I think, that's definitely being built in, and of course, you've got the minors system there as well. So these areas, maybe not at the NHL level, but for quite some time, have been hitting the ice against each other.
Well, let me tell you this. Wait till you meet that Vancouver Canucks fan base. If you think Oiler fans are bad, wait till you meet the Canuck fan base. They're the worst.
Boy.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I think the Oilers fan base is probably the worst. Realistically,
you can't knock yourself. What are you doing?
You go to enough games and you're like, these people are animals.
Yeah, you did fall over those seats at one time. So. Yeah. When you get injured at the hockey game, that's when you know it's bad.
That's when you know it's real.
That's when you know to put down the IPA.
All right. So we've touched on all the key points. I got a question about you, especially somebody from the States. You're our first guest from the United States of America.
I
got to touch on that on those Canadian lads. We do have a few you listeners in Virginia, which really scares us because we think it's the CIA. But I don't know why they'd be listening to us. But anyways, they haven't reached out to us yet. So when we keep asking them to. But anyways. Talking about broadcasting, so ESPN and TNT are taking over for the broadcast rights for the National Hockey League in 2021. What are your thoughts? Because I obviously saw Stephen A. Smith doing some shots on ESPN a couple months ago during the expansion draft stuff, and then when they announced it. But what are your first thoughts of what you're going to be getting in the States from a broadcast point of view with ESPN with TNT?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think just from the announcements and even the people that we see on each of the lineups, I get the sense that ESPN is kind of leaning into this, right?
Nice.
I think they want to be fun. I think they want to have the opportunity to bring in some different voices while also having some just really solid people that we know hockey. And so I think they're kind of having fun with it. I think they see an opportunity here. I think to a lot of the things that we were hitting on earlier, I think that we've already seen them do a lot more activations with Emily Kaplan as an example. So
fantastic reporter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Blake Bolden, anyone who listens to like anything that I say about hockey for like 2 seconds knows I absolutely love Blake Bolden. And so she's joining up with ESPN. They also have Hillary Knight, who of course was crushing it at Worlds. Now has passed Camry Granato, who's a part of the Seattle Kraken when it comes to international goals scored at the Women's Worlds. So there's a lot of really cool stuff. I've heard that, and that goes back to this traditionalist kind of thinking, but, people don't like that Stephen A. is essentially being himself, but just now bringing it to hockey. I mean, he's not going to change for hockey. Like that, forget about it. Like, that's not going to happen. So, I mean, I know that some people, I don't know, is like Stephen A. Smith's style or what he says, heck to the no. But but he's him. He's himself the whole time. I don't expect him to change. So I don't know, fans might have to adjust there. When it comes to TNT, it was interesting that their announcement, took them so tight and close, in my opinion, to the preseason. But I think not as much diversity. That was one thing I certainly noticed as someone who is a diverse broadcaster. Yeah. Some of the old guard really there. And then, of course, I don't usually say this outlet very often, but Barstool brings with it a lot of heat, and I think rightfully so in some areas. The rest of it is just kind of, fans being fans. But, some of the things, though, on the serious side of that, kind of are reminiscent of why certain groups, historically speaking, and generally speaking, have not felt as comfortable in the hockey space. So it was a little interesting to see that TNT, who obviously has, a really great asset in that they cover the NBA, which alongside the WNBA are one of the more progressive and inclusive and diverse leagues. It was interesting to see them not necessarily lean into what I thought was going to be.
I feel they went safe.
Yeah, exactly. They definitely went safe. They didn't lean into their identity. They leaned into hockey. So that was a little bit different.
The NBA on TNT, in my opinion, and I do watch it every once in a while when we do get it streamed up here through TSN. It's fun, it's dynamic. They don't take themselves seriously, and that's what the NHL needs. And I'm really surprised that they went down the road. Even I know Jeff's wearing Superfan '99 Wayne Gretzky jersey right now, but I'm so surprised they put Wayne Gretzky on the panel. He is a terrible speaker. He is a terrible speaker, and that's sacrilege. There's a Wayne Gretzky '99 jersey signed right over there, and I'm a fan. I grew up watching Wayne Gretzky. I got to experience 5 Stanley Cups, the whole bit. But Wayne Gretzky should not be talking about the game, every night on TNT. Where they honestly, this is where they should have put some comedic genius on the panel who has some hockey background. I know everybody's not the biggest fan of Bill Burr, but Bill Burr does like hockey. And could you imagine him on the panel? That'd be a pretty interesting night to watch.
I agree with you. Love to see Wayne and company light it up on the ice. Not so great in front of the mic.
Yeah.
But
I think people are going to turn it off. People are going to turn it off.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I agree with you. I don't know that there's enough a difference in personality. Someone that's just going to be like, bam, like emerald it up for them. So I don't know. We'll see. I know that they have some people, I guess, that are kind of their scratches, if you will, that they can kind of bring in. It's like, oh, we need this. Like, bring them in. So I don't know. But so we'll see how that works out.
Well, I honestly, from my opinion, it's almost like they're going CBC. So Hockey Night in Canada, the whole bit. It's the vanilla broadcast of the night. At the end of the day, you turn it on just to watch the good old Saturday night game, right? Like you watch Hockey Night in Canada. The colorful piece was obviously Don Cherry. I don't know if you got a chance to experience old Don, but probably a good reason he's off the air. Yeah.
Well,
I'll let Jeff jump in here.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. They almost went after the CBC blueprint from 30 years ago. It's just like, listen, we're going to talk hockey. It's going to be mundane. It's going to be vanilla. And that's not really what anyone's after anymore. And quite frankly, too, like you brought up Emily Kaplan earlier, like obviously when ESPN made the announcement that they were partnering with the NHL, I don't know if you watch Around the Horn or Pardon the Interruption, but on Around the Horn, all of a sudden she became a mainstay, which like I was happy as hell to see because I was like, this is who you need talking hockey. Because other than, I think, Wyshynski, they didn't really have any talent that was willing to go out there and talk about it. And Emily Kaplan's a little bit more fun to listen to and a little bit more dynamic than Greg Wyshynski.
Yeah, people just want to punch Greg in the face, especially in our fan base, because he just loves to goat us. He's a troll for the Edmonton fan base. Just watch on Twitter. He just loves lighting us up. It's awesome. So,
fantastic.
But TNT did drop the ball on that. They could have had a dynamic group, and I know they got a few guys from NBC, took a few guys from other places, and I love Anson Carter as a former Oiler, but like at the same time, he's not really that dynamic on the mic either. So it's like I think they will make adjustments as time goes on, and I think they'll have to.
I think the player that really is going to garner huge broadcasting dollars is going to be PK. When PK retires, that guy is going to be an NHL media mogul. He's going to be hotly sought after. So
yeah, absolutely should be for sure.
Yeah, PK.
And I think he's the beginning of that. What we were talking about earlier, players showing their personality, and it's going to be a PK Subban. It's going to be an Austin Matthews. It's going to be those guys who finally got to say what they wanted to and didn't care about the repercussions of what the NHL may or may not have thought about it.
Exactly. So. Yeah, I think PK is a great example. You're also seeing, Connor Carrick now has come over to the Seattle Kraken. You see a lot of guys doing their own podcasts and stuff. So I think it'll be really interesting to see. And I'm not saying that I want anyone to retire before they're ready, but I think that that type of player that is having a different type of interaction with media on their end personally, but also just with media members is going to be really fun to see.
Oh yeah, the more energy, the more comedy too. Like bring comedy to the sport. Like I'm tired of just the last comedy we had was Wayne Gretzky on Saturday Night Live, and that was a waste of time. But as a kid, you're all excited. It's like Gretz is on SNL, and then you're like, that was pretty shitty. So.
Yeah, great. Not really that funny, are you?
No, he's not. No, enjoy on TNT. Listeners at TNT, enjoy. So, Erica, I want to thank you for coming on the pod tonight. We really enjoyed this tonight. How do people reach out and get in touch with you? Listen to your work. Where are you located, and how can they reach out.
Sure thing. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you both for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I said, I felt right at home with the color scheme, so that was good to go. But, you can find me, of course. We're right now still on our off season, so we're 3 times a week over at Locked on Kraken. And it's the same on all social media at Locked on Kraken, all one word. Kraken with a K. Don't forget about that. Yeah. And me personally, you can find me on social media at elindsay08. That's where I have a lot of my work. I'm a freelancer, so I do a lot of work even outside of hockey, all kinds of different places, but everything elindsay08, that's where you can find me. And I'm excited. As I mentioned, I'll be out there for training camp and preseason in Seattle. I'm originally based in New York. Hey. That's how I knew. I was like, that guy's Italian. Get one of those. It was like we had like a whole conversation and just a nod. It was fantastic. Yeah. But that's going to be exciting. Get to see this team together on the ice. Really get to see the philosophy of the team grow. So if any of that is interesting to you, definitely stay locked on Kraken.
Well, you know what? We're going to be... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, before we let Erica go, though, I do have to give her props on something I would have never expected on a podcast or broadcast. A FUBU reference. And I was like, honestly, I was sitting at work, I turned to my chair, I'm like, FUBU still exists? I couldn't believe it. But no, I had a great laugh on that. That's the only time it's ever probably been uttered on a hockey podcast. Congratulations, Erica.
Thank you so much. You see, I go for the low-hanging fruit.
How is that low-hanging fruit? I haven't seen that in 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I go for the deep cuts.
Well, on that note, Jeff bringing up FUBU, thank you for joining us on those Canadian Lads podcast. This is episode 38. We are excited to review the Pacific Division this year and dig into what hopefully is the Canadian Cup coming home with those Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid, Leon, Neon, Draisaitl, and the boys. So very excited to have you on tonight. Jeff and I thank you, and we will be following all your stuff this year and excited to watch Locked on Kraken. And you can get that on YouTube, right? Spotify,
yes, absolutely.
Apple.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once we go back to 5 days, we're going to integrate fully on YouTube as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Erica. And listeners, enjoy. You're going to love this podcast. I know we enjoyed bringing it to you, so good night.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Erica, thank you.